What's going on, folks? Good morning. It's Larry at Packmaster Dog Training. Quick little segment here on a interesting dog I worked with here recently. IPO dog. Okay, I don't train IPO dogs. If someone calls me for IPO training, Schutzhund training, any kind of sport work, I send them to people who specialize in that. So I don't do that. With that being said, in the past couple of years, I've worked with a lot of IPO dogs that have issues or problems on the field. So that I do. Do. I've said that before. Do. But again, if someone calls me, they want to do IPO training, I send them to someone who specializes in that. But I will work on fixing problems. So this was an interesting one. 3-year-old male German Shepherd, big, strong dog, powerful, very, very impressive dog. The big issue on the field was when the dog would approach the blind or any time there was a bite involved, but especially in the blind, the dog would get out of control and couldn't control itself and would lay the bite on or act up and get wild before the bite. And look, these dogs are supposed to get amped up and worked up, but this dog was just a little out of control. So for the past year and a half, what they have been doing, when the dog showed up, it had a prong collar on and a double receiver, high-powered e-collar. And so where it's been taken over the past year or so is when the dog gets amped up, the prong collar comes on full blast, the e-collar comes on full blast. There's a lot of conflict. And then when the dog responds and stops to the pressure from the tools, the bite is given. Okay? So the owner's request was, we have to be able to do something else because at this point it's just not working on the competition field. I said, okay, let's try this. Now I want you to think about what's creating this, okay? So the first time the dog came up, I said, the instructions here is you do nothing until I tell you to do something, okay? Do nothing. Don't do what you're normally doing. So there's no corrections, no verbal commands, no nothing, all right? So bring the dog back out. The dog goes to its normal self, amped up big time. And the owner's looking at me, and I tell her, no, don't do anything. And the dog's going, it is batshit crazy. It really is. But then at one point, the dog kind of hesitates and looks at the owner. And then shortly after that goes back and for another 3 or 4 seconds gets up and then stops. And then comes and sits next to the owner. I say, give the bite now. Boom, the dog went and got the bite. And there was definitely some confusion on the dog's part. Gives the bite, the dog works on the helper this time. They out the dog comes back. I said, remove the dog for 60 seconds, come back in and let's start over, okay? Same instructions, do nothing. No e-collar, no prong collar, no nothing. And so the dog gets amped up. It's going batshit crazy again. But this time took about 10 seconds less before the dog looked at the owner with some confusion and then stopped acting up and then came and sat in a heel. I said, give the bite. Boom, the dog gave the bite. Okay, we repeated that 3 or 4 times. Each time the issue became shorter and shorter and shorter. So then by the end of a 20-minute session, 25-minute session, that problem was completely eliminated. Completely eliminated. And now they thought it was pretty amazing. They couldn't understand it. They were scratching their head. It's not. It's very basic and very simple. So you have to break down and put yourself inside the dog's head. Think about what the dog was thinking. So for the past year, there was a ton of conflict, right? Big, strong, dominant dog, just a beast of a dog. And when the dog went apeshit, the dog would deal with the pressure. Very, very hard prong collar correction, e-collar correction. And then when that appeared to work, where the dog would stop, the bite would be given. So in this case, what had happened was the pressure from the e-collar and the correction from the prong collar became the marker. That was the marker. So you know how a lot of people use yes and then the reward comes? It's the same exact thing. So instead of using a verbal marker, they were using a physical marker. So the pain and the pressure from the prong with the e-collar was the marker that let the dog know the bite is coming. That's it. You know, it's a little different than saying yes and giving a food reward, but in the dog's head, it's the same concept. So we had to remove that marker and just rearrange the dog's thought process. That's it. Very, very simple. Okay. So I know a ton of you are dealing with issues just like that. So just stop and think for a second and think, what is this dog thinking up in its head? What is creating this problem? Okay. Now, if the correction from the prong collar, e-collar worked, not a problem. Then you do what you have to do. But in this case, it was actually activating the dog, and the dog would wait for the correction. And that's why in the beginning there was some confusion, and the dog stopped and looked at the owner because he was waiting for the marker. Okay, he was waiting for that marker, and that was the pop of the prong and the stim from the e-collar. That signaled that you're going to be allowed to bite now. Okay, so that always came before the bite. All we had to do was change that up. Very, very simple, and that problem won't come back because now the dog understands that doesn't create the bite. That's not what gets the bite. Doing what I'm being asked to do gets the bite. Very simple, okay, guys? So whatever issue you're dealing with, really think, break it down into really small parts, and hopefully you could make things a little easier and have the success that you want with less conflict. Plain and simple. Peace, folks. Happy weekend.